What is up, Shredmeisters? Today I thought I'd start a new series called Questions and Answers. This is the series where I answer your questions. I'm not exactly sure what the frequency of this series is going to be. I'm going to try to do it monthly right now, and if it becomes very popular I might make it into a weekly thing, but we'll see what happens. And if you have any questions for the next Q&A, leave your questions in the comments of this video, and I'll check back, and on the next video I'll answer your questions on that. And probably for each video I'm gonna try to target around 3 to 5 questions, depending on how long and in-depth the answers are. I just want a nice chunk of video when it comes to the Q&A. So if you have a question, leave me a question below in the comments and I'll get back to you in the next video. If I mess up your name, I apologize. I'm just going to do the absolute best I can when it comes to pronunciations. In this video, I'm just going to be answering questions that have come through the comments in my videos until the next one. And the next one, I will use the comments in this comment section here. So if you have a question, just leave it in the comments. Okay, this is by Ricardo Gobi, and it's for my SD1 video. He says, it sounds awesome, especially for heavy rock rhythms. What do you think about the Jim Root Tele? My only doubt is the neck. Is it fast and comfortable? I'm an Ibanez player and don't know if it would be good for me. I love the Jim Root Tele. It's really great. It looks fantastic and it plays really well. It has a 12-inch neck to it, and that's a very wide neck, especially for a Fender neck. And you really have to get used to it. I would suggest, if you are interested in the Jim Root guitar or any of his guitars whatsoever, go to Guitar Center and try one out today, because the neck is very, very wide, especially if you're going from an Ibanez. Ibanez guitar necks are very thin, and this one is, it's a bit big. But overall, that guitar is really well made and it sounds fantastic, and the body wood works really well, and it has that nice deep sound to it that you would want from a nice metal guitar. And the EMGs just really sing and do their job really well. They cut through and they just freaking rocks. That's what I gotta say about it. And the locking tuners, it stays in tune really well. And it's definitely worth the money if you can buy a Jim Root Tele. Okay, this one is from Teriyakamoto. Okay, this one is from Teriyakamoto. I'm not sure if you're Japanese or you just really like Japan. Either way, it's cool because I'm a huge Japanese fan, more or less. This comes from the Ibanez Echo Shifter video. Is all the buzzing and humming from the pedal? Are you using decent cables? Noise gate that mofo. I knew I would like this pedal. What part of the US are you in, Dustin? First time drive-by? Nice, yeah, I like the pedal for sure. Okay. When I made that video, I did not have a gate on my amp whatsoever. I did not have I only had the NS2. The NS2 just takes away the sound out of your pedals, more or less, but I had the delay pedal through the effects loop, and so it wasn't really working whatsoever. Later on, I compiled a better silencing gear rig so that you can just strictly hear the sound of the pedals and the amps and all that without hearing all that buzzing and noise. But when it comes to YouTube, you just have to put things out there and try to improve on the long term, and that's what I am doing. But yeah, that pedal does not make bad noises whatsoever. It only makes good sounds, more or less. In terms of where I'm at in the USA, I live in Arizona. It's a great place to live. I was originally born in Pennsylvania, and you could probably tell that from the way I talk. Check out my how to remove noise from your amp video, and you'll see my entire rig. It's basically, it's an ISP decimator into the effects loop, an NS2 in the front of it, running through all of the pedals to remove the noise, and then I have a Behringer HD 400. And then I have a Behringer HD 400 running through the input to remove ground loops, and that really helps out to get your purest amp sound you can possibly get. Okay, this comes from a guy that I cannot even comprehend his name. He says, between the Mg10 and Blackstar Fly 3, which one do you think is the overall better practice amp? That's a really hard one. I think they're both really good, and they're both going to sound great as practice amps because you don't really need over 3 watts to practice at home, unless you're tone deaf. Unless you're Helen Keller, you might need more wattages than 3 to feel the vibrations or something. But they're both really good amps. I prefer the MG a bit more because it has hair, but I think it really depends on your practicing. If you practice in multiple places, the Fly is definitely what you want to go with. But if you just practice at your house all the time, I would just go with MG. I think the Blackstar amp overall sounds better. It has a nice delay to it, and it has a nice chunk to it, and it has a more focused modern sound to it. The MG is a bit cheap sounding in my opinion. It sounds good enough to practice. It's very raw and in your face, but it's just not really pleasant sounding. If you were going to play with the MG just practice wise and you wanted a good sound, I would highly suggest just buying an amp modeler and plugging it into the MG and then playing that way. Or you could buy a Marshall Code, and that's basically the MG with an amp emulator on top of it. As for the Blackstar Fly 3, the only real bad part about the Fly 3 is that it doesn't have that extra hair on it that really makes it brutal sounding. It's very hard to get a full like modern metal sound out of it. You get at best like JCM 800 type tones. But overall it's a good sounding amp. It has good tone to it, and it's very portable. And they both have aux in as well as headphones for private practice. They're both great. But to give a definitive answer, I would probably just stick with the MG, just because when I practice, I just stay at home. Okay, this one comes from Milan. Have you picked up an Epiphone Les Paul Studio LT? If so, what is your opinion between the Affinity and the Studio LT? I played a Studio LT back in ye olden days, more or less, and I really liked it. It was a great sounding, cheap guitar and had a lot of sustain to it, and for a Les Paul on the cheap, it's definitely worth the money, especially if you don't have enough cash to go around to buy something more in the $400 Epiphone range. I would say it's about on par with the current Squier Affinity guitars out there. They're both really solid guitars. The pickups are a bit on the cheap side. They have that thinner sound to it, but for the money they're really good. But if you compare it to the old Squier guitars like early 2000s, the thing just slays those guitars, because the early 2000 Squiers are just not good. So if you do buy a Squier, buy new. And as far as the LT Les Paul goes, just buy whatever year that it's out, more or less. I don't think the quality has changed much over the last couple years. They're both great guitars. I think that does it for the first Q&A. I'm gonna work on this series and make it better and better as things go on. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comment section for the next Q&A, and have a great day.